is a pleasure for me to be meeting with all of you this evening. It is an honor for me to be sharing this space with you. So welcome to this evening session on the coaching conversation. And it is part of our monthly meta coaching system series. We also have the neurosemantic series, self-leadership and parenting. And I feel so blessed to be meeting familiar faces. So that's watching behind the, I don't know, is that Mount Kinabalu, picture of Mount Kinabalu?
No. It's a mountain in China.
Mountain in China. Okay, thank you, watching. And also having Danielle joining us. And I know in a short while, checks you're going to have your dinner in a short while. And Sarah, thank you for joining. It is such a pleasure for me to be seeing all of you this evening. And in the 60 to 90 minutes together, we'll be discussing on the processes involved in a coaching conversation. What are the processes involved? I will also be mentioning, I say mentioning about the kinds of conversation, but we won't go into depth in terms of the kinds because there's something like more than 20 different kinds of conversations. So I'll just mention them, right? So that's what we are going to be doing in the 60 minutes together. And as usual, I will pause for discussion after every main point, not every main point, maybe one or two main points. Then I'll open for discussion, especially to give you the opportunity to ask a question if you would like to have anything clarified, or equally useful to me, if you are the type who likes to think out loud, I'd like to hear what you are thinking. So again, just a reminder that my style is to be light and humorous. So if I laugh or smile, I'm never laughing at you, but at our silly human qualities. My purpose is to lighten things up, reduce being serious, and be more real. So before I begin this evening, I would like to welcome Christian, who's just joined us. Christian, thank you for joining us. And where are you joining us from, Christian?
Hey, Mozaki, I'm from South Africa.
From South Africa. Wow. It is an honor for us to have you join us. As far as I'm concerned, the other participants are regular faces, so I feel really comfortable. And to have you join us, it is an honor for me. Now, the first point with respect to this coaching conversation, and in case you do not know yet, what I have been doing over the last 5 months, and 5 months now, I'm taking a chapter from Michael's book, the meta coaching system. The objective is so that people, and I say people, I'm referring to both meta coaches and non-meta coaches, to be familiar with what's inside this thing called the meta coaching system. So I think this is topic number chapter number 4 or 5, if I'm not mistaken. And this topic is on the coaching conversations. Now, for those of you who are familiar, in 2020 and 2021, I covered the whole book, Coaching Conversation. So that's why in today's discussion, I will not be going through the kinds of conversation because those are covered in that particular book. So this evening, we are discussing on the topic coaching conversation. Now, as those of you are familiar, this is organized under the Institute of Neurosemantics Malaysia. So let's get along with the discussion on coaching conversation, because if we were to look at meta coaches or coaches, what is it that they do? So that's why this first slide that I'm sharing with you is coaching is most essentially a conversation. Yes, there is that psychology and philosophy behind it. We covered that last month regarding the psychology of coaching and the philosophy. Yet when you look at a coach doing his work and observe what's happening, basically what you are seeing is that the coach and the client talk with one another. What a coach most essentially does is facilitate a conversation. The key word there is to facilitate that conversation. You will see and hear the coach asking questions, listening, exploring, supporting, giving feedback, framing, challenging, confirming. So these are the things that the coach will be doing. What you'll see is that you see them having a talk and you can hear the dialogue conversation. And you also observe an intense and highly focused dialogue between a coach and a client, which cuts to the heart of things. This is the heart and soul of coaching. Yet it is not a normal conversation. Typically on Wednesday evening, such as this, when I talk about coaching conversation, what comes to mind to me immediately was on Thursday afternoon. Typically, I have my coaching client. I have a coaching conversation with my client, and when I talk about this later in the evening, a lot of what I experience in the afternoon would come to refresh my mind. So when I talk about listening, exploring, supporting, and I was ticking off in the head, okay, so that was what I was doing earlier in the afternoon. So that's basically what a coach is doing. Now, another thing here is that coaching is an intimate and intense engagement between coach and client. The thing is that it is intense and intimate because what the coach and the client wants is to get to the heart of the conversation. So that's why the intensity is there. Yes, there is that humor and lightness coming in. At the same time, we want to get to the heart of the matter, the heart and soul of the conversation. At the same time, there are several truly astonishing things about these conversations, which makes it especially unique and amazing. So what are these things that make it so amazing? Let's take the first one. The first amazing thing is that the client does all the work. And when I say that, especially for people in Malaysia, the tendency is to go into shock because schools in Malaysia train us to be spoon-fed. You see, we go to school, the teacher gives us the questions, gives us the answers. We are so used to being spoon-fed. In a coaching conversation, no such thing as spoon-feeding. The client is the one who does all the work. It is not the teacher or the coach. Yeah? The coach facilitates the client in the work, wherein the client gets clear, makes decisions, creates plans, designs new responses, changes beliefs, accesses resources. So these are what distinguish coaching from therapy. Now, the second amazing thing is that the client is the one who is completely responsible for getting the result that she wants. This may sound strange, even uncaring, but the coach is not responsible for the results. The client is. So that's why in coaching we say the star of the show is the client, not the coach. The coach evokes, provokes, challenges, teases, holds accountable, confronts, supports, reinforces in order to get the client to access and mobilize his resources and to translate it into everyday life. This, again, differentiates coaching from therapy. Therapists at time will actually take responsibility for the client or patient, especially at first prescribing expert advice and even controlling as part of nurturing and reparenting. The word is psychiatrists, therapists may need to reparent the client. So the client is like a child. So that's why therapists may need to take responsibility for the client. And that's especially true in situations where the client may be in danger of doing harm to himself or another. This never happens in coaching, because in coaching, we are coaching people who are healthy in their psychologies. So no issues about reparenting, no issues about taking responsibility. So it is the client who's responsible for getting the results that she wants. Now, a third amazing thing is that the generative changes that unleash potentials in coaching occur through the conversation. The key is the conversation itself. So that's why this topic for this evening is on coaching conversation. The key is the conversation itself. We are linguistic beings to such an extent that we can and do create a great amount of our reality via the language that we use and the way we use language. Yet, language is not neutral. Language is both semantically and neurologically loaded. So the languaging in that conversation is the key to affecting change. This highlights the unique place of neurolinguistics and neurosemantics. These disciplines, NLP and neurosemantics, do not study linguistics as such. They study the neurological effects of language on persons. That is how your language affects your neurology. This concerns how neurology creates, is involved in, and is influenced by linguistics, and therefore how to use the best kind of language with ourselves and others to get the best results. And the fourth one is most of the power of the coaching occurs outside the coaching session. The conversation primarily operates to initiate a change of map. The navigation occurs in everyday life. The session will be about how to get along with one's colleagues, how to lead, how to get oneself to the gym on a regular basis. So, Danielle, you were mentioning about exercising and all that. So that's what that coaching conversation is. Then the actual work is when you actually go to the gym or you face issues in going to the gym, how to face life's ups and downs, how to be resilient, how to connect and communicate with your father-in-law or your father-outlaw, so whatever it is. So in the coaching conversation, we go through the frames that we have regarding that. The actual work, the actual power is when we go out into our world and begin to speak and behave accordingly. So that's when the actual power of coaching, it occurs outside of that coaching conversation. So that's why what I prefer to do with my coaching clients is that I ask them to journal the coaching conversation, and from that journal to list down the tasks, because it is through the tasks that the client goes through, that's when generative change occurs. So that covers this part this introduction part to coaching conversation. So I'd like to pause here in order to invite any questions or comments. And before I get any questions or comment, I'd like to welcome Zo for coming in. We have MTM there, Muhammad Tajuddin Amin. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. Yeah. He's my mate at school. So we were in school together. For 5 years, we shared the same dormitory room. So there you go. So any questions or comments with that introduction to coaching conversations? Yes, checks you, go ahead.
Okay, because I'm on earphone, can you hear me or not?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, because just now, like what you mentioned just now, Daniel always talk about exercise kind of things, right? I also start doing exercise since this year kind of thing. Yeah, and especially since May, right? I try to walk 5 km after work per day, kind of things. But of course, sometimes when we want to do all these kind of things, right? We already have in mind, I want to do it, okay? But sometimes it's just like, fated, cannot do it because why? Rain. So all these kind of things, but how to so-called like, I don't know whether it's like to like console myself or to calm myself down or pacify myself. Yeah, it's okay 1 or 2 days not doing, don't feel too guilty, all these kind of things, you see. Because sometimes I plan to try to do it as much as I can. It's like Monday to Friday kind of things. Then Saturday, Sunday I go cycling kind of things. But sometimes you see rain. And that is the time where you feel very like annoying, very, you know, why do this to me kind of things, you see. So yeah, how to deal with all this kind of, I don't know whether it's out of topic or not.
Yeah, it is within the topic that we are discussing.
Yeah.
So this is why in the meta coaching system, it is three stages. The first step is we call it coaching essentials. These are about the skills of communicating and relating with other human beings. Now, the second module is called accessing personal genius. So exactly what you are mentioning, Chexiu. Accessing personal genius is we are in the genius state when we are able to fully use our thinking, feeling capacity, the inner game. We'll be talking about that this evening as well. And to use our thinking, feeling capability to say and do behave in the real world. Now, the issue is that when our thinking, feeling capacity are not aligned, when they are not aligned, we find difficulty in doing what we're supposed to do. The example that you gave is that you have decided to exercise. You have decided that. However, sometimes your thinking goes, I'm feeling a little bit pain along on the back, so I think maybe I'll not. So is that an excuse or is that a reason? So these are part of in the coaching framework. If I were to be coaching someone regarding that, then we want to really look at it. Is it a reason, a valid reason, or is it an excuse? So for you to be able to know that when you do something or when you don't do something that you've decided to do and you don't do it. You don't do it, is it because of a valid reason or are you giving yourself an excuse? And sometimes when people give themselves an excuse, they layer it with justification. Oh, because the rain is so bad, so that's why I can't go. So when you have your psychologist right, there are times that you deliberately say, okay, I'm going to be lazy today. I'm not going to go for my exercise, but I'm not giving myself any excuse. I'm just not going to exercise. Deal with that. Yeah. So it's about, it is not about you have to. There are times that you don't, but you know you are not doing it because you decided not to. And then you have to pay the price. So meaning to say, maybe for lunch, I cannot go for nasi kandar. I'll just have something light for lunch.
Yeah.
So that's what we are referring to. meaning to say you don't give excuses for not doing what you're supposed to do. At the same time, you may decide not to do it and to face that consequence. So these are part of how we are playing the mind games.
Okay, so is it like, okay, like for example, there was one day, right? I woke up at 4:30 a.m. on the Sunday kind of thing. Then after that, I carry my bike, okay, went out to the spot I always do cycling, and almost like 500 meters reaching that spot before I park my car, the water start dropping from the sky. I said, oh no, kind of thing. You see, why do this to me again? Kind of thing. You see, I want to cycle. And that day, I really sit in the car and wait for like a few minutes to see whether the rain stop or not. And it didn't stop, so I have no choice but to just turn back at home. Is that by doing that action? Is it am I doing an excuse, or I just admit, okay, today I'm not going to cycle, that's it? Well, nothing wrong, kind of thing.
Yeah. Only you can answer that.
But yeah, because to me, it's like my answer to I give to myself is the answer I give to myself is I'm not that hardcore. I'm just want to cycling and not really. I mean, I just want to keep myself moving lah. Not really. I have a target to achieve. I want to reduce my no. I hope to reduce, but I'm not that extreme kind of things. So what I do is just everything just go with the natural flow lah. I'm not really set a target to so-called. I must reduce my sugar by how many points, my cholesterol by how many points, by BMI by how many points, kind of things. You see, so I just reduce. So that's why this is what I'm doing lah. So I don't know whether this is the right thing to do or not, or I need further coaching.
So as I said, the answer actually lies with you. So it's about operating in ways that are congruent with your meanings, having higher level meanings, and to be able to behave in a congruent fashion. Because as they say, it is not what's outside there that's the problem. It's what inside here.
Correct.
So I can if it is raining, just put on a raincoat and just go out walking, and then start singing, I'm walking in the rain.
Actually, last week I tried that before. I actually walked in at the Arena Sukan MPPJ during rain with an umbrella. I think people look at me at one kind of things. So, you know.
Okay. So let's move to the next point, Checks you. So that's what coaching is about. We are getting our frames right, and then to be able to move. So are we giving an excuse, or do we have a reason? And when we do things deliberately, not do what we decide to do, we are clear that I'm deciding not to do it, instead of putting blames or justification elsewhere. So that's also what we are looking at when we are coaching. Right?
But how about our frame is different from most of the people? Then how?
The key thing is this. It is not about having frames that is the same or identical with other human beings, because each and every one of us are different. The question that we want to ask is, are the frames that you are having, are they serving you, or are they going against what you want?
I see. Okay, because why? Because why I'm asking you guys, because I do my evening walk after work without changing any sport attire, just with office wear, long pants, and also a long sleeve kind of thing. And then I just go and walk. I just change the pair of sports shoes, that's all. So again, people look at me one kind. Yeah.
Yes. How people look at you, that's their business.
Yeah. That's why I'm just walking. I don't care. Just with the long sleeve and long pants, the office wear like that, and then just with a pair of sports shoes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Check you. Now, the next thing that we are going to discuss is when we look at coaching, we see people having a conversation, the coach and the client having a chat. So the key thing is that what processes are involved in that conversation. Yeah. So as I'll share my screen again. The first process, there are 5 processes that are involved in a conversation. The first one is empowerment. A coaching conversation is empowering. So what can you and your client expect from a coaching conversation? At the most foundational level, it will initiate a sense of power, clarity, experience, performance results, and forward movement. So these are the key things that that needs to happen in a coaching conversation. Otherwise, it is just another chit chat. Yeah. So coaching conversation, 5 things happen: that sense of power, clarity, experience, performance results, and forward movement. The reason is that coaching first and foremost facilitates and challenges the client's power of response ability, and ownership. This is perhaps the most crucial of all coaching conversation. The ownership conversation, so that the client can own their powers and use their thinking, feeling, saying, doing powers in ways that will bring them towards their goals. Coaching keeps the challenges and resource questions front and center for the client, and does so to keep putting the client at cause. So the client is at cause of whatever situation that they are in. So at cause means that they are able to use their powers and move from where they do not want to be to where they want to be. So what are the questions that a coach will ask in order to initiate or invoke that power in the client? Asking questions like, what are you going to do? What are you going to choose? What do you want? What do you need to be able to pull this off? What resource is missing? Are you willing to develop it, to develop that resource? What part do you play in that? What are you learning? What will you do differently the next time? So these questions are there to instigate the client to take full control of their powers, the powers of thinking, feeling, and the powers of speech and behavior. So that's the first process that a coach uses in a coaching conversation. Now, the second one is understanding clarification. There's nothing like a coaching conversation to enable people to get clear on what they want and what things mean to them. Coaches facilitate the communication exchange to be precise, specific, and detailed about these things. Why? To enable the client to develop a precision in his thinking and languaging, which is actually a great gift. Why precision and in thinking and languaging? Because to a lot of people, these are the areas that they get muddled in. That muddle thinking and languaging, creating vagueness, and because of that vagueness, they cannot proceed. So you, as a coach, do it also to co-create with your client a specific target as an outcome, which gives direction to a client's life. That, in turn, leads to generating top-notch clarity about roles, performance, and challenges. This involves probing, exploring, understanding about motivations, intentions, goals, skills, and strategy. So if you were to ask yourself, what is it that the client should be excellent in? Sorry, what is it that the coach should be excellent in? The coach should be excellent in the skill of questioning, because through the skill of questioning, the coach is bringing that clarity to the client. In meta coaching, we use the NLP communication model, which is the meta model of language. Working with the meta model in this way has another benefit. It builds critical thinking and questioning skills for both parties. So as a coach, when I'm using the meta model of language, I'm getting clarity and specificity from the client, and the client being asked the meta model of language, they get more clarity and they begin to have that critical thinking ability, because being questioned through the meta model of language gives the client that discipline about how to structure their thinking process. So that's the second process that the coach does in the conversation. The first one is empowerment, and the second one is understanding clarification. So again, I'm going to pause here with respect to these two processes. Are there any questions or comments? Watching? No?
Oh, I don't have.
Okay, thank you. Anyone want to think out loud? Okay, you're good? Right. So let's move on to the third process. Which is facilitation of experience. And this is crucial. It is critical over here. So the question, what else does a coaching conversation do? What else would we observe occurring in a coaching conversation? We would observe the coaching conversation not only creating greater precision and clarity, but inducing a client into a state so she experiences the conversation. So that's why in the meta coaching system, we talk about 7 core skills of coaching. One of the skills, I think skill number 7, if I'm not mistaken, is the skill of inducing state. Because in a coaching conversation, we want to get the client to experience, to be induced into the state of whatever that they are talking about. The first conversation steps back. And the first conversation is about empowerment. So it is about a step back to look into their powers. Now, this conversation is to induce the embodied experience within the client. That's because without experiencing, a client is only talking about things and is likely to be intellectualizing rather than experiencing. Experiencing the conversation enables the client to embody the outcome, the resources, the change. So this is the neurology part, to bring in the meanings, the experiences into the body, and to activate the body's ability to make real. Making real is to make actual, to actualize what he wants to become. This use of language creates what we may call hypnotic states. That's because what we are talking about, managing, delegating, planning an exercise program, embracing our children's emotions, is not present in the coaching conversation. We are referencing it, yet if we talk about it by accessing and experiencing it as a state, we begin to commission the body to feel and experience it as we run the neurological pathways that evoke the new response pattern. Why do we want to run the neurological pathway? That's about, as we are doing a mental rehearsal. I believe many of you are familiar. When you want to do something, you do mental rehearsal. You rehearse in your mind about what you need to do. So this bit about the feel and experience is to get the rehearsal into your body so that you have the neurological pathways set up, so that when you are actually doing it, it is all, you have already rehearsed it in your body. The meta coach uses the model of hypnotic language patterns in NLP called the Milton model. So using the Milton model, we are inducing the client to feel the experience that we are talking about, instead of talking about the experience as a third-party observer. In that way, they are not getting it into their neurology. Okay, so the fourth point process over here is performance results. Isn't that what coaching is about? Performance results via the language, the way language itself facilitates empowerment and embodiment. A coaching conversation can get results by enabling the client to change his performances. This occurs without needing to give advice or counsel. The coaching conversation starts with internal performance, and that gets results on the outside, which can be measured. So this involves two internal game powers. So the two internal powers, this is the internal game. So what are the two internal powers with respect to performance? One is the mental performance, about clarity, precision, understanding, insight. The other is emotional performance, emotional intelligence, working with people, teams, empathy, recognition of the states and emotions of others, self-awareness, and self-management. So these are the internal powers. So when we talk about performance result, so the internal powers being used in that way, and then bringing it, transfer to the outer game in terms of the two external powers. What are they? One is verbal performance, skills at linguistic framing and reframing of meaning, linguistic precision, hypnotic language patterns for state inductions, persuasion to influence others or yourself. So those are your verbal performance. Then we have the behavioral performance, competency skills at leading, managing, following through, influencing, persuading, organizing. So those are all the behavioral performance. So when we talk about coaching, bringing in the process of performance results, we are talking about both the internal game performance of the internal game powers and the performance of the outer game powers. A central way that the coaching conversation gets performance results is by focusing on the personal and psychological resources within the client. These resources could be knowledge, practical know-how, strategies, or a state, such as courage, willingness, trust, joy, playfulness, commitment, decision. And to achieve that, a coach will ask questions about resources. So what are some of these questions that the coach may ask. Yeah, what resources do you need to enhance your performance? What do you need to know or learn? What do you need to implement? When have you experienced even a little bit of this? So those questions are about bringing that performance thinking, feeling into saying, doing, and accessing all of those resources. Once an external and internal personal resource is identified, the coaching conversation calls it forth in the client and solidifies it in the client's experience. This makes it readily available for the client to implement. So these are the third and the fourth processes that the coach brings into the coaching conversation. The third one we talked earlier was on the facilitation of experience. And the fourth one is the performance results. So let me pause here so that I can invite any questions or comments from any one of you. And welcome, Hashim. Thank you for being here. Zoe, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
If there's one thing that coaching, if I remember, among the things that I learned is we want to do it content free. We do go through the process and be content free as possible. It means that we just facilitate the client to get what they want to get without actually finding out in great detail about what they want. That means we don't get personal. Don't be what they call kepo lah. Don't be. The word is like don't be a busybody. I don't need to know exactly what you want, but you tell me and I guide you towards the process of getting it. But this is easier said than done because a lot of people tend to share too much, and I find it if I decide to detach, then this guy will say you are not empathic enough. But from what I understand, the philosophy is the coaches should not be involved in the detail. We should be content free. True? What's your comment?
So, Christian, go ahead. You raise your hand.
Can I answer?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, so Mortajuddin Amin, if I'm saying that right, please tell me. I can hear a very strong black or white in the way you said that. I would just need to just care about the process, not the what do you call it, the system process or structure. And if I do that, I become empathetic. So it's not either or, it's a both and. So having things content specific grounds the experience. So you want the content so that you can bring it to where this is important for the person. Where will they use this? Otherwise, you're just going to be in the clouds all the time. It's going to be a wonderful conversation, so lovely, so fun, and the rapport is high. It's amazing. And when they leave the coaching conversation at the same place they were when they come back, it's the same. So you bring it in, you say, okay, so where would you want to use this? In certain cases in coaching conversations, there are clients who just love to speak and just keep telling a story. You can then, okay, so how does this link to what you want? How does this fit to the coaching conversation? Why is this important for you to tell me this? To bring it specifically to what is going on. Because I also found myself, you're sitting there, you're like, 30 minutes, nothing has happened. It's like, what a great story. Why? So bring it into the coaching conversation. And then hold your client accountable with that, saying like, you've been talking all about this. Is this really what's going on? Is this what we're here for? Yeah. So that'll be my answer.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. So the detail helps the client and the conversation to ground, so you are grounding the conversation to someplace. It's just that as a coach, we need to know that the solution is not in the details, because what's preventing them is up here, is the inner game. So that's why going too much into the details. So that's where I understand why some people say that it is not about all of those details. Then you need to go up there. Yes and no. As Christian mentioned, yes, you need to go into the details to ground it, to know where it is happening. However, the solution is at the meta levels. So when the client overshare about what's happening in the details, the client is going to get lost, and you as the coach, you are going to get lost in all of that detail. So that's why you need to bring them up into the meta levels, because the problems are in their meanings, frames, beliefs, values. So those are where the problems are. So as what you mentioned, Zoe, is that when people go in with so much detail, they can talk about it until the cows come home, but they will not get the outcome. So as a coach, that's when we want to draw them up into their inner game, their thinking, feeling process.
I think the word I normally use is I chunk up
Yes.
the issue. I chunk up as much as possible. I chunk up. But the moment I do too much of that, they will say you're not empathic enough. You don't want to listen to me. You just want to go meta. So that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that it's a either or. No, I'm not saying either or. I'm just saying the practical problem that we face.
What you can do is that what can help you is create a frame at the very beginning of the conversation. Yeah. So you have a frame that there will be that this is a two-way conversation, that I may make it faster or slower for me to be able to understand what's happening up there with respect to what you are saying. So when you have those frames, you remind them that that's where you are bringing them. Yeah, Christian, you want to add something?
So I agree with the pre-framing, because one pre-frame is worth 1,000 reframes. And also when you hear your client saying like, oh, you just want to go up, you don't want to listen to my story, they're mismatching with you. So that then don't mismatch with them then again. Match. So in coaching, we talk of pace, lead. So go where they are first. If they want to tell a story, cool. I'm here for a story if you want to tell me a story. I'm just reminding you that we're for coaching conversation. So do you have to tell me the story to tell me why it's important, or can you tell me now why it's important? So you go where they are first, be with them, and then lead them upwards. Because you also said earlier, like, then there's a point where I lose complete empathy. So it sounds to me like you can reach that empathy and then go up. Okay.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. And also, that is also why when we start a coaching conversation, the first question that we ask them, what is it that you want, or what is the most important thing that you want to talk about with respect to your growth at this moment? So that sets the agenda for the conversation. So when they bring in the experiences in the real world and they might get lost in that, we bring them back to the agenda. So just to remind you, when you came here, you wanted to talk about this. How does that relate to this? So that's how you bring them back to the original agenda. Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you. So any other comments for that? I like this. So let's move on to the fifth process. And this is equally what the client comes to see you about. They want to move forward. So the process that we bring into the coaching conversation is forward movement. Everything within the coaching conversation is dedicated to enabling the client to move forward in her life. This begins with a clear goal. So the question, so what is it in your development process right now that you want to talk about. So this begins with a clear goal, then a clear sense of the first steps forward and how to deal with any interference that might arise. This explains why the first coaching conversations focuses on clarity, decision, planning, experiencing, and changing. So in order to have this forward movement as a structure in the coaching conversation, in meta coaching, we use the basic algorithm of present state and desired state that is available in the NLP score model that provides a basic framework using this template. So under this framework, we have the primary state or the current state. And at the current state, we have the symptoms and the causes. Under the desired state, which is future, in the desired state, we have two facets, outcomes and effects of that preferred state. The bridge from present state to desired state is made up of resources which allow us to make the now-then journey. Now is the current state, then is the desired state. So the resources will allow us to make the now-then, to bridge that gap. Into this overarching framework, we can put a lot of smaller details and techniques. However, this is the primary framework that we use in the coaching conversation, so that we are bringing the client forward in their lives. So this will help the client to answer the question, where do you want to go? Where does the client want to go? And when the client answers that, it could be the desired state or the effects, the results, the symptoms, consequence that result from getting into that desired state. So the client might be giving out through the conversation in the meta coaching system. We look at the outcome. We have the well-formed outcome model. So that is why in the coaching conversation, we go through that, identifying through the well-formed outcome model that will allow us what are the outcomes the client wants, the effects that they will experience, what are the in the current state that they are in, what are the problems they are facing, and identifying that the cause and knowing that gap. In order to bridge that gap, the client will be able to identify what resources that they need in order to get there. So this is the, I would say, if I were to use the word tool, but I would rather use the word model. This is the model that we use, that when we use this, it introduces, this model in itself introduces that forward movement. So it is not just talking and trying to find viewpoints. However, this model in itself creates that creative tension in the client, so that they begin to move from where they are now to where they want to be. So that's the fifth element in the process. So let me just pause there. So we covered the 5 processes that happens in a coaching conversation, and a coaching conversation is different to a conversation that we experience in a teh tarik shop. Okay, because the processes that we bring into the coaching conversation, 1 is empowerment, 2 understanding clarification, 3 facilitation of experience, 4 performance results, and the 5th one just now, is forward movement. So these are the 5 processes. So let me just again pause there. I'd like to invite any questions or comments from any one of you. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Christian.
Mazuki, on the score model at effects, looking this from a well-formed outcome view,
yeah.
Are the effects, the why is this important, the results, and or the KPI? Is it one of those 3 or all of the above? Because I'm a little bit confused as what effects are.
Effects are what they experience as a result of achieving the outcome.
Okay.
Yeah. So it could be as simple as, let's say they have an outcome of generating an income of $100,000 in year 2022. So when they achieve that, that's the outcome. So the effects are when they have that $100,000 in 2022, then with that $100,000, they are able to buy this, to pay for that and all that. And because of that, they will experience a general well-being or whatsoever. Those are what we are referring to as effects. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So go ahead.
Okay. You know, one of my favorite about this effects thingy is these Cartesian questions. You're aware that Cartesian questions is like, what will happen if you get this? What will not happen if you get this? What will happen if you don't get? What will not happen if you don't get? So it's something like, what will not happen if I don't get? I will not commit suicide. Okay, good. Right? As an example. So when I ask this question, that's where they give me that dirty look or that funny look. You say, are you crazy when you ask this question? No, I ask this question because I want you to clarify and you want to be sure. Because if you are going to work so hard to achieve this, at the end of it, you find out that the effect is going to destroy your family. Would you want to do it? But then they turn out, oh, okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. But for some people who are not used to the Cartesian questioning, that can be rather brutal.
Yes, it's quite a brutal thing, and it causes a lot of perturbation.
Gradient, so gradient.
Yeah. Normally I will do it to somebody who's already quite used to the system.
Yeah.
If it's a first timer, I will be very gentle.
Good to hear that. Yeah. Have you heard of that question? People ask, how do you boil a frog? Gradient.
Yeah. How do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
Similar question.
If you have a pot of boiling water, you take a frog and throw it into the pot. The frog will jump out. So somebody who's not used to the Cartesian questioning will say, what, are you crazy asking me those questions? So how do you boil a frog? You get a pot of cold water, put the frog in it, and then put a burner underneath it. The frog keeps adjusting to the heat, and after some time, it gets cooked. Okay, thank you. So what I'll do next is that covering the 5 processes of what happens in a coaching conversation. So this is more of just, I would say, an information, because we'll not go into detail. Those are the processes happening in a coaching conversation. The next question that I started off with is that, so what are the kinds of conversations? So I will not be going into detail, just sharing with you the kinds of conversation that is available to the coach in a coaching conversation, the types of conversations. Now, I think I dedicated the whole of last year going into these coaching conversations. So one is we have the core coaching conversations, and Michael listed 6 of them here. the clarity conversation, the decision conversation, planning, experience, resource, change, transformation, confrontation conversation. So all of these conversations are what is considered as core coaching conversations. And in the meta coaching system at Coaching Mastery, these are the conversations that we practice and we learn in order to have to be able to be competent in having coaching conversations. Now, adding on to this are the coaching conversations for groups. So for groups, there are altogether another 6 types of conversations added to that: the mediation conversation, meta conversation, rounds, problem solving, collective learning, and productive conflict. So these are additional conversations that we bring in when we have coaching conversations for groups. So for group and team coaching, so these are additional conversations that we bring into the process. Then we have the executive coaching conversation. So apart from number 6 and number 8, where we have the confrontational conversation and the meta or reflective conversation, bring in additionally the sounding board conversation, systems conversation, the paradox conversation, the outcome conversation, the feedback conversation, the unleashing potentials conversation, and the integration conversation. And interesting, number 18, that the unleashing potentials, because at the executive level, leadership level, that is where the client need to bring out the full potentials into the work that they do. Then we have also political conversations. Now, political here doesn't mean that you have to be involved in a political party to need these conversations. However, when human beings come together and arrange themselves in a social structure, that political element comes in. So what are the conversations involved here? The philosophical conversation, the power conversation. Number 12 there has already is there in group conversation, which is the productive conflict conversation, then the responsibility conversation, and also the change conversation and integrity conversation. So these are the types of conversation that are available, and depending on the clients that you have, depending on the needs, so you will be using any one or even more of these conversations in every coaching conversation that you have with your client. So that basically wraps up what we have planned to discuss for today. So our focus earlier was to look into what are the processes that makes a coaching conversation different from the social conversations, the teh tarik, or for Christians' benefit. Malaysians here, when we mention teh tarik, and they know it's a social. You've been to Malaysia before, Christian?
Not yet. Not
yet. It's a milk tea that is you can aerated aerated milk tea, and sometimes for people who are into it, they have just 1 cup and it lasts for about 2 hours. They keep talking and talking.
Okay.
Just a cup of tea and they'll be there for 2 hours. So
you keep them there forever.
Yeah. So what differentiates a coaching conversation with those kind of conversations are the processes. The processes are there to bring the client to achieve their outcomes. And through the meta coaching system, there are so many different types of conversations. I've gone through Michael's book there on coaching conversations, which is coaching conversation is volume 2, if I'm not mistaken. and I need to go through it again because there are so many different types of conversation. The key thing here is as coaches, we need to know what process needs to happen right now and what kind of conversation do we need to bring in so that this particular conversation will be most useful for the client at this point in time. So this is how a meta coach knows what to do, when, with whom, and how to do it in order to be of the greatest benefit to the client. So if I were to say, what are the takeaways that I want to focus on in this presentation this evening, one is that I would like you, if you want to take away an appreciation of the incredible power of a conversation. The conversation you have with a client is the experience your clients have with you. And there are many kinds of coaching conversations. The value of knowing what conversation you're having, the kind of conversation your client wants or needs, is that it enables you to know strategically where you are with the client and where to go. And probably another one that I just want to mention here is that we change one conversation at a time, and you never know which conversation will be the one that will be utterly life transforming. So with the skills that we have in coaching, we have the ability to impact people in their lives permanently. Yeah. So I'd like to take this opportunity to go through and ask from each and every one of you. So what is your main takeaway for this session? It could be one thing, it could be two things. So what is your main takeaway for today? What I'll do is I'll start off with the people who I have not heard any voice yet. So I'll start off with Guat Ching. So Guat Ching, go ahead, Guat Ching. So what's your takeaway?
My key takeaway, ask the right question to get the right answer. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, I'm nodding my head because I'm reminding myself that the reason why thank you very much for that question. The reason why I'm reminding myself that I'm linking it with one of the points that Tajuddin was mentioning earlier. What if the clients keeps on oversharing? And that is also one of the pitfalls that I personally need to take care for myself. I tend to just follow. So Guat Ching, when you say that, asking the right question to get the right answer for the client. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Danielle, go ahead.
First of all, thank you for tonight's sharing. I think my key takeaway is even if it's not with client, I think with our friends and family members, if we somehow can have incorporate a little bit of coaching conversation in our daily conversation, it will bring value or meaning to them. Thank you.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Daniel. Next, Sarah, go ahead, Sarah.
So my key takeaway, I would say, would be, because there are so many processes, so it's best as a coach is just to follow where the client wants to take the conversation, and then from there you will lead according to the processes that you have shared here. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it is a conversation, but the coach facilitates and leads it. And then if you're skilled enough, you will, get the client to have, like you say, a life transformational experience just from a single conversation.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Sarah. Appreciate that. Christian, you're next.
So my takeaway is the way you explain the processes. I've never heard someone explain that way. So I thank you, Mazuki. I'm going to share this in my community as well. And just thank you for this. It felt like I was listening to Michael and I loved it. So thank you.
Thank you, Christian, for that. Maybe I sound like Michael because I'm taking it wholesale from his book. Yeah. Checks you. Go ahead. You're next.
Yeah, I mean, coaching conversation can be used in all situations in our life. Can be an argument, can be a confrontation, or even you want to scold someone. Also, you can use conversation instead of like in a better manner kind of things lah. So that's why I said it is useful in any situation. Yeah, good, bad, ugly, all can be used. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Checks you. And last but not least, Zo, go ahead.
Okay. I think I better go back and read up again the various conversations, because the more familiar with the many types of conversation, the more flexible we become.
Yes.
I don't want to end up being like a person who has a hammer. Anything that he sees is a nail, because he has a hammer. So at least I want to have different tools. Yes. Yeah, probably I'll go back to the book and read up again on all those. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. And before we end, I'd just like to make a couple of announcements with respect to the activities that we have lined up. So the first one is this coming Saturday afternoon at 3. I'll be speaking on what is the psychology underpinning your leadership. So this is also another event organized by Institute of Neurosemantics Malaysia. So you can sign it over through Eventbrite as well. And the other one, the other announcement that I would like to make is that we are bringing Michael to Malaysia for Coaching Mastery, ACMC, in June of 2023. So for those people, if you have friends who would like to know about coaching, who's interested into coaching, and especially who wants to bring the skills of coaching to the professional level. So this is what it's all about, coaching mastery. My personal experience of coaching mastery was that I went there without having a clue about what coaching is, really to the extent, and coming out of coaching mastery with the confidence that I can hold a coaching conversation that is productive to a client. So that's how effective the training is. So that will be in June of 2023. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for being here. I feel so honored that you joined me for this evening. So Zoe, Sarah, Christian, Jaxiu, Guat-Ching, thank you for being here. You remind me to record the session, and also Danielle, thank you very much for joining us this evening. So I look forward to seeing all of you again. So with that, I wish you all the best. God bless. May everything will come into place for you. So looking forward to seeing you the next time. So thank you. Good night and goodbye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.